Since mid-2022, politicians have warned Americans and a growing number of tax people to be exact about this. And the IRS has said that it wants to hire new employees using funds from the $80 billion allocated to the Inflation Reduction Act. But according to several experts, the IRS does not plan to use all of that funding for hiring purposes alone. As the New York Times pointed out, the IRS total number of full-time employees is 20% fewer than what the agency had in 2010. Even though the population has grown, to bolster its numbers, the agency plans to hire using a lot of money, with roughly $7,200 of those being hiring enforcement staff. This would add to the 5,000 phone personnel the agency hired before the 2023 tax season began. Increased funding to the agency would help it more experienced auditors who can handle complicated tax filings. It could help the agency close the annual gap between what is owed and what is collected. The agency has said that it wants to help taxpayers get the deductions and tax credits they deserve. Right now, the focus is on providing eligible and educational materials that break down deductions in plain language. So hopefully people can get their stimulus cash. Folks, we have a lot of news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI, and SDI. Continue watching this video because you don't want to miss out on this. For the vast majority of Social Security beneficiaries, their monthly check is vital to their financial well-being. After 20 years of annual polling, it is found that no less than 80% of retirees rely on their Social Security benefit in some capacity to meet their monthly expenses. But with the U.S. debt limit and ceiling deadline looming, more than 66 million beneficiaries are wondering whether the Social Security checks will be on the chopping block. The debt ceiling represents the authorized borrowing limit for the federal government. It's important to keep in mind that it doesn't include borrowing for new spending or projects. Rather, it's to cover the federal debt limit and existing financial obligations. At no point in America's history has the federal government defaulted on its legal financial obligations, which is why the current debt limit impasse between Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill was turning heads. The expectation prior to this week is that Treasury lawmakers had perhaps 2 or 3 months to agree on a bill that would raise or suspend the debt ceiling in order to allow the federal government to meet its financial obligations. The Treasury Secretary and a former Federal Reserve Chairman allowed and altered that sending. Now, Yellen's letter made it clear that the debt limit issues for the U.S. may be worse than initially feared. In other words, if lawmakers fail to act, the U.S. Treasury may not be able to meet the country's existing debt limit obligations. But the big question is, does that include failing to pay Social Security benefits? Well, thanks to a law passed in Congress, Social Security checks should keep flowing, even if the U.S. government begins defaulting on its other financial obligations as early as June. This law allows and effectively obligates Janet Yellen to circumvent the debt ceiling by disinvesting the Social Security asset reserves. Since Social Security's exemption, the program has collected more revenue than it's paid out in benefits and other administrative expenses. This cash, known as Social Security's asset reserves, is required by law to be invested in interest-bearing special bonds. Plus, as Joe Biden begins his campaign, he is facing substantial and multiple challenges. According to the Washington Post, his overall approval ratings are to a new low. Among Democrats, most say they prefer their party nominee is someone other than Biden. A few say that he's been consistent, though. And Biden has presided over an economy that has included strong job growth and low unemployment, but also high inflation. While inflation has declined in recent months, Americans across party lines continue to debate whether this will help the American people or not.
Disappointed, yes.
Yet as the session nears its midpoint, none of this is happening. Top Democrats accuse Republicans of not wanting any deals in hopes of improving their hand in the fall midterms and having control of the budget surplus next year.
There's a lot of issues that are out there, and the idea that you'll just run out the clock and maybe roll the dice that you've got the money to spend it all yourself.
They have provided insights into which Americans are receiving the most of the latest round of aid, because the payments are just based on a number of things. People in different households, like your income payments, favor families, and if you're having a dependent, you'll get more money. Under the American Rescue Plan from Joe Biden, he signed into law. It did send out $1,400 per person, but this means that larger families are likely to get some bigger checks with people compared to the people who have no money at all. In Idaho, where IRS data showed that households enjoyed the second biggest average payout, at $2,300 a month for people with around 2.5 dependents. States with the smallest average per household payments are people in the Northeast. Rounding at the bottom, that's around $2,000 a month of stimulus cash, everybody. And Massachusetts had also the biggest and second smallest payment at an average of $2,200 a month. Families in the Northeast tend to be smaller compared to those in many western mid-states, because those people have higher incomes and likely limited number of people eligible that are in for more stimulus cash. For instance, the last round of checks provided $1,400 to each single taxpayer, and now it's $2,800 if you're finally making less than 150 grand. Above those dollar thresholds, the payments taper off. The IRS announced that more than half of the payments have been sent to households making less than 50 grand a year. Households earning less than 10 grand received the greatest number of payments, with the tax agency sending more than 22 million checks to the income group. And that's far more than expected. Back in September, though, the IRS announced it was attempting to contact the nearly 9 million low-income people who didn't receive the money that they needed to get. But now, fast forward 2 years ago, and there are between 9 and 10 million eligible individuals who still haven't got stimulus cash. So although October was the deadline for taxpayers who missed the April deadline to file taxes, non-filing individuals and families had until November 15th to file a simplified tax return, get the stimulus checks in your bank account, and so forth. But after the November deadline, you can still miss the missing payments by filing a federal tax return. In cases where a federal income tax return was not filed, the law provides most taxpayers with a 3-year window to claim the refund. So don't be worried if you haven't got your stimulus cash yet. Just be a little patient. You should be getting it in the mail very soon.
Finally, I opened on a very sad note. Let me close on a happy one. There's immense joy and pride that the Senate passed the Respect for Marriage Act, a major victory for freedom, dignity, and equality for all. I'm so excited. House Democrats, as you know, originally passed the bill in July following the alarming concurrence in the Dobbs decision by Justice Thompson, when he concurred by saying he took aim at Obergefell. He just made it clear that this could be another target. The bill ensured that regardless of what the MAGA majority in the Supreme Court may do in the future, the federal government will never again stand in the way of marrying the person you love. We're going to take it up next week on Tuesday. That's going to be announced by the Rules Committee, so you knew first. And we will send it swiftly to the President's desk for signature. I'm particularly happy because it'll be one of the last bills that I will sign as Speaker in an enrollment ceremony.
Year-over-year prices also jumped, making many essential items more expensive. The Senior Citizens League, a nonpartisan senior group, started a petition in September of 2021 to lobby for a new $1,400 stimulus check just for seniors.
Prescriptions.
Another stimulus check would also offer important tax advantages for those on fixed incomes.
Stimulus is an advanced refundable tax credit.
Breaking news, Joe Biden is now debating on taking